Hey everybody, this is Craig Cottle, the Director of Nature Reliance School, and we're going into our next set of lessons on personal fitness for survivability, emergency preparedness, whatever it might be, with Dr. Brian Jones. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about flexibility. The inside of each of these muscles seem to fit.
Waiting on word from city or state officials to see what's going on, what they can tell us.
All right, so again, this is my friend Dr. Jones. I go back and forth between his professional name and our friendship name, Brian, so glad you joined us. So Brian, flexibility, what are your thoughts on being flexible for survival preparedness?
Okay, let's take a look at the term flexibility, for instance. It's one of those things that you think of a flexibility, gymnasts, martial artists, kicking over your head, being able to do the splits, all that sort of thing. That's not how I view flexibility anymore. I like the new term, and this is sort of current with corrective exercise and mobility. So flexibility is basically the extensibility of a muscle, like how far you can stretch, and we tend to think of static stretching, you know, can you touch your toes and that sort of thing. But mobility is the ability of free movement, free pain-free movement of a joint around all of its normal motions. And so that's really what we want to get into when it comes to the first phase of flexibility. People tend to think of flexibility as an activity that requires its own training program, but in research that's been done, people get more flexible just from lifting weights to their full range of motion. If you take somebody who never uses their body, and what happens is we get tight in ranges of motion that we don't go through. Okay, that's why humans can squat. I mean, babies squat. People that squat can squat, but people that don't squat, people that sit at a 90-degree angle or elevated more, they never go through that range of motion. Their muscles weaken, they get tighter, and so just moving through those ranges of motion is going to increase your flexibility.
So, what about, is there a good training program or methodology, or is it just working, just moving?
Well, there's
how about yoga? Is that?
Yoga's a really good training program. It's one of those things where flexibility is not necessarily, I don't typically prescribe flexibility exercises to people who aren't doing, unless it's a sport-specific type of activity. So if you're going to do a sport, you have to be flexible enough to do the moves of that sport, okay, without injuring yourself. The less flexible you are in that way, the less mobility you have around those joints, the less capacity you have to go through that range of motion. If you force it, then you're more likely to injure yourself. It's not absolutely essential to stretch a lot before you exercise. There's actually, it's kind of a myth that it prevents injury. There's not, I mean, the research that's been done doesn't show that it prevents injury. Your ability to move through those ranges of motion is what prevents injury. So one thing to check out is the functional movement screen. It's Gray Cook. It's basically a series of exercises.
Greg Hook?
I'm sorry, Gray Cook.
Gray Cook, okay.
C-O-O-K. He's a physical therapist who's designed something called the functional movement screen. And,
I'll find the link for that and put that in the description below as well.
And it's just something to, there's a lot of information out there on it, but it's just a few basic exercises that he uses in his test to evaluate a person's mobility. So if you can do these exercises and you don't have an imbalance on one side or the other, then you're probably okay for most activities unless it requires some specific flexibility.
Okay. So as far as emergency preparedness, what would you see, just considering it that way? Again, hurricanes coming your way and you got to get out and you jump in the car and you go, and then what kind of things do you see coming up with that?
Well,
from a flexibility standpoint.
The flexibility issue, really, again, let's start with sedentary, person that's just come off the couch and they want to get fit. Now, from a standpoint of just the average person, there may be some mobility issues that are so bad that you're going to be prone to injury even without exercising. Okay, people have low back issues, and really they have improper biomechanics. So they don't know how to, in addition to having lack of mobility, they don't know how to properly squat down to pick something up. They bend at the waist and they get their discs in a problem. So just getting, getting out, exercising, and learning how to do the exercises properly will make you more flexible. Now, above and beyond that, unless you have a specific condition that requires you to be more flexible, then a minimal amount of flexibility training, I think, is necessary. I usually stretch after I lift weights. Stretching, doing like static stretching before lifting weights will actually make you weaker. So
before activity, it's just basic warm up, or is that important?
I do before activities. I do active, dynamic, not ballistic. I'm not jerking myself through there, but I'm doing like shoulder rotations, knee rotations, hip movements. I'm going to use those joints that I'm about to use, and I'm going to get them lubed up and warmed. So going through all those exercises. Now, if you go to a physical therapist and they tell you that you should probably do these exercises before you lift or after you lift, then you should listen to them and do those, because you can do some prehabilitation, what they call injury prevention, for areas that you may be prone to injury, or you may have a current injury and you may need to do some rehabilitative exercises.
So it sounds like after, the further we get along, let's say, because we've got followers that are all over the country and got a lot of followers in the UK too, is what person should your average ordinary person like me, who should we be seeking out? Physical therapist, a personal trainer? How do we know we got a good one or a bad one or not? It's
on a and I know that they go by different names. A physiotherapist maybe in the UK. But physical therapists are becoming, especially from the musculoskeletal standpoint, more of a primary care. I know most insurances don't require referral. If you have insurance, it doesn't require referral. You go in and get an evaluation. Unless you're dealing with an injury, a pre-existing injury, the average general practitioner, MD, or even an orthopedist is probably not going to do anything to help you stay healthy. They're going to try to fix you when you're broken.
Right.
Okay? So what we can do is, a lot of times a physical therapist, it's a good idea to go in and get an evaluation. And there's some chiropractors out there that are along the same lines.
Well, the chiropractor I go to does a lot of Olympic training as well, and so he's helped me out tremendously on all these aspects. Right. So, I mean, you're on board with that as well, a good chiropractor?
I am. I think that there's limitations to the practice of chiropractic. I wouldn't go there for them to treat my diabetes, for instance, you know. Mm-hmm. But if it's for musculoskeletal things, there's really not. They kind of straddle the fence with the physical therapist. So a good physical therapist, a good chiropractor who knows about movement patterns, who is familiar with athletics, can screen you for potential problems in mobility and give you exercises to kind of keep your core sturdy and your joints healthy. And I think that's really the focus.
Cool. All right, guys, so that's the last part of this lesson. In the next one, what we're going to be talking about is nutrition, and take a look at that from a diet perspective and all those sorts of good things with Dr. Jones as well. So come on, join in. Let's learn together.